Which celebrity or public figure deserves a huge apology? 1. That woman whose child got eaten by dingoes. 2. Lindy Chamberlain really got screwed. She had to wait 32 years before her name was cleared, and by then nobody cared about the retraction. The press and the police were the worst. 3. Lindy Chamberlain? Totally, she was absolutely hated in the 80s, and there are still people who don't believe her. Horrendous to go through all that after losing your infant daughter. 4. To this day my nan doesn't believe her. I've told her several times now that a dog eating a baby isn't even weird. She says Lindy is a liar because she always wore black even before the baby died. So naturally that means she killed the child? Pretty weird how easy it is to brainwash people. 5. Lindy Chamberlain? One of the worst ever travesties of justice and a stain on Australia's history. A toxic mix of religious bigotry, because of the church she belonged to, misogyny, because her stony face meant she didn't react as people thought she should. When in reality she was so traumatized that she had completely shut down, and blatant racism, because the attitude towards the Aboriginal people who testified that a dingo was indeed capable of killing a baby was just blacks. What would they know? The sad thing is it could just as easily happen today. 6. I've said it before, but it's just insane to me to think that people really believed a pack of feral dogs that are essentially coyotes wouldn't go after a defenseless baby if they saw the chance. 7. The media deserves a significant amount of blame for perpetuating the narrative, literal decades of appeals, and it wasn't until 2012 that a coroner officially supported the determination that a dingo had indeed taken the 9-month-old. I work with dingoes a ton, and it's really distressing just how much bad info is still out there on the animal. We regularly encounter people who will walk right up to them and get upset as we yell at them to back up and leave them alone. They are not a domesticated dog. It's a wild animal, for Pete's sake. 8. People believe all kinds of misguided, stupid stuff about wild animals. Witness them as they climb into zoo enclosures, have close encounters with grizzly bears, and touch top aquatic predators. They seem to think the animals have complex feelings and deep intelligence and respect for human life. Dingoes are cute, too. 9. Complex feelings, deep intelligence, I believe. Animals are way smarter than most people realize. But they don't get to surviving in the wild by having compassion and respect. 10. And we still basically mock her by making "The dingo done took me, baby" a stupid Aussie catchphrase. Imagine the most traumatic moment in your life being played off as a national joke catchphrase. 11. And we still basically mock her by making "The dingo's done took me, baby" a stupid Aussie catchphrase. My parents visited Australia in the early 2000s, and they used that phrase as a joke, and they were quickly cautioned against it by a few locals, politely but firmly. I don't know if that reflects general opinion on the phrase, but my parents certainly got the idea that a lot of Australians wanted to treat it as something not to be joked about. Of course, that was also 20 years ago. 12. There was this jury member in the Dutch version of American Idol whose face looked like she had a lot of Botox done. She only had a neutral facial expression. People mocked her for it and kept reminding her how beautiful she was before and that it was such a waste what she had done. Turns out it wasn't cosmetic surgery or Botox. She had had a stroke and didn't think her medical history was the entire country's business. 13. Journey Kageman? Wow, I never knew that. That you managed to keep that info to yourself while everyone is saying disgusting shit about you is just brave. I already had stopped caring about it years ago, but this suddenly boosts my respect for her. 14. Mira Sorvino. From Harvey Weinstein? She wouldn't play ball with him, and he low-key spread the word that, as an actress, she was hard to work with. Code for diva. He killed a promising career. 15. And since then she became an ambassador working with human trafficking victims. Truly fighting the good fight. 16. Peter Jackson reportedly highly considered Mira for a role, which character, in the Lord of the Rings films, but Harvey Weinstein objected and forced Peter to remove her from the casting list. 17. Yeah, there were a few of those. I think Rose McGowan was another whose career he ruined. 18. Gretchen Mol and Bridget Fonda too. And many, many more. Fuck this piece of shit. It's a crime Hollywood didn't do anything to stop him until 2017. 19. Courtney Love, too. Don't get me wrong, she had a shitload of other problems, but she was sure as shit right about him. 20. Oh man. That red carpet interview where the reporter asked her what advice she had for young women trying to break into the industry, and she said, "If Harvey Weinstein invites you to his suite at the Four Seasons, don't go." Yikes. That was, a decade or more before anything came out, too. 21. Yeah. She caught a lot of flack in the media and popular culture for drugs, Kurt Cobain, whatever. I don't know much about her other than the jokes I see on TV, but she was pretty brave in coming out about that pos way before most anyone else. 22. They actively protected him. Look at what the powerful in Hollywood did to Corey Feldman for speaking up. 23. Fuck Barbara Walters. Hope she's burning in hell and Whoopi joins her soon too. 24. Barbara Walters tried to out Ricky Martin 10 years before he was ready, even though we knew she was a pos. 25. Ashley Judd. 26. There's a good movie about this, she said, 2022, where Ashley Judd also plays one of the real victim of Harvey. 27. Yeah, she came out about him right before Me Too and was cancelled by Hollywood. But she kinda kicked off Me Too by being the first one to speak. 28. Anyone affected by him? I hope he rots in prison. I hope Kevin Smith gets Dogma back from him one day. Also, kudos for holding himself accountable in terms of not hiring actresses because he was told they were difficult to work with. I hope all those women are getting the help they need and anyone else potentially harmed by him. 29. Greg LeMond. Who was the greatest cyclist, Tour de France winner, etc. He accused Lance Armstrong of doping, which was absolutely obvious to anyone in the sport, and he got dragged through the mud and vilified for years after, lost his business, was exiled more or less from sports broadcasting, branded a kook, or an alcoholic or mentally unstable. Right up until Lance finally admitted that he was doping and got all his wins taken away. I don't think he ever apologized to LeMond though, not that it would have made up for all the shit he went through. 30. I had a teacher in college who was a Greg LeMond fan. My teacher liked cycling as a hobby and had a blog about cycling, and he had made entries about how Lance was doping and somehow the Armstrong team got word of it and threatened him with legal action to take it down. So he did, and that's why he's a Greg LeMond fan. 31. Lance Armstrong's team had an Irish mass who came forward about his doping. He and his legal army crushed her in British courts for libel, where the losing party must pay the winner's legal costs plus damages. At least Greg LeMond had some money to fall back on. 32. The worst thing about Armstrong is he successfully destroyed people's lives as a part of his denial. Want to lie about how you're totally not doping? I get that, doping is rampant in cycling. But to ruin people as part of your lie? That's unconscionable. Lance Armstrong should have been literally flogged publicly for the shit he pulled. 33. I have twice as many testicles and just as many Tour de France wins as Lance Armstrong. 34. Lindy Chamberlain. A dingo really did eat her baby. It must have been horrifying. But she went to prison, and the line, "A dingo ate my baby," became a joke because it sounds absurd and she has a funny accent. 35. She was also accused of not behaving like a normal mother would, not crying enough, etc., and widely accused of lying. But it's society's expectations of behavior, especially women's behavior, in the unexpected that has proven flawed. 36. She did cry at first, but everyone said it was crocodile tears. So she became stoic, and everyone said she was cold. 37. Shelley Duvall. Dr. Phil is an asshole. 38. He's scum. On that topic, Head Baby and few other kids that appeared on his show ended up in the troubled teen industry. They came out about it and people just acted like they were bad kids, so they got what they deserved. 39. Well, she went on to make $52 meters in of money and is working with Paris Hilton to get that industry shut down. 40. Thankfully, they're doing a great job. Breaking code silence is making strides. One of my centers I was in got shut down recently, and I really think if it wasn't for activism and BCS's work overall, that wouldn't have happened. 41. Yes, they're doing a ton of good right now. I wasn't trying to diminish her accomplishments, just as a comment so people were aware of what she's been up to. Also, that $52 million? Apparently she was never nude for any of it. Smart woman. 42. Who's the dude who dressed like Dr. Phil, down to the bald cap, and ridiculed Phil on his own dumbass show? 43. The bum fights guy. 44. When the guy from Bum Fights takes the moral high ground, it's time to reassess your life. 45. Sinead O'Connor was 100% right about the Catholic Church, the Pope, and the cover-up of the insane amount of molestation taking place. 46. Brittany Murphy. Everyone thinks she died of a drug overdose, but the autopsy says there were no drugs, other than cold medicine, in her system. Turns out, the odd story was invented by a real estate developer to cover up that she died of pneumonia caused by black mold in the condo they built. 47. Whoa. I had read it was mold related but didn't know the other part. 48. Yeah, her husband died a few months later from the same thing. Their parents had to sue the developers to get them to stop spreading misinformation. 49. That's crazy. I never knew about the mold. Edit Wikipedia says her cause of death was from pneumonia, anemia, and combined legal drug intoxication. An autopsy was performed the day after she died. The Los Angeles County Coroner's Office, in a report issued February 2010, said that the manner of death was accidental and that the cause of death was pneumonia, with secondary factors of severe iron deficiency, anemia, and multiple drug intoxication. She had elevated levels of hydrocodone, acetaminophen, L-methamphetamine, and chlorpheniramine, all of which are legal. The report observed the possible adverse physiological effects of elevated levels of these medications cannot be discounted, especially in her weakened state. So it wasn't just the mold, but most likely a combination of her illness, as a result of the mold, and trying to treat that illness with drugs, that caused her death. All round terrible. 50. The family of Sunil Tripathi, a Boston University student who went missing a few weeks before the Boston Marathon bombings. A young woman who went to school commented that he looked like one of the suspected bombers before their names were released to the public, and it went somewhat viral on social media, at least in the Boston area. The media picked up the story and ran with it to the point that the Tripathi family were getting harassed in the middle of the night by journalists wanting comments from them about Sunil possibly being one of the bombers. After the names of the bombers were released, the Tripathis reached out to the journalists and asked for help finding their son, but most of the calls were never returned. A week later, Sunil's body was found in a river near Providence, and it turned out he had committed suicide a month prior to the bombing. I can't imagine how that would traumatize a family, and from what I can find, none of the journalists or media outlets really apologized. 51. Reddit was a major contributor to that. Hence the "we did it" meme. Also likely a factor in the FBI releasing the names of the two suspects earlier than planned, causing them to panic and try to flee the area. 52. Richard Jewell from the Atlanta Olympics bombing? Bro was a hero and the media turned him into a suspect. 53. The cops' FBI turned him into a suspect and intentionally let the media run with it. 54. Brendan Fraser. 55. Yes. And Mira Sorvino for the same reason. She was a victim of refusing Weinstein. 56. I'm so happy that Brendan Fraser is getting his flowers. 57. His reaction to winning the Oscar was heartbreaking. 58. Ashley Judd too. She had a successful career going and then just poof. It was over. 59. Ashley Judd is an incredibly smart person. I went to college with her and she was mind-blowing smart and independent. I know she has had many struggles, but I hope she is at peace with the incredible good she has done for women's rights. 60. There's so many women in Hollywood whose careers were destroyed by Weinstein. And some became chronically depressed or developed other issues, etc. 61. Corey Feldman. Guy went on The View and point blank said powerful people in the industry were sexually harassing people for years, and all Barbara Walters said was that he was hurting the industry. Corey Haim killed himself over sexual harassment. Courtney Love warned people about the industry. 62. Courtney Love did it on live TV on a red carpet, haha. I don't remember the exact question, but it was something like, what advice would you give to up-and-coming actresses? And she just came straight out and said, never go to a private meeting in a hotel room with Harvey Weinstein. 63. If Harvey Weinstein invites you to a private party in the Four Seasons, don't go. 64. Hollywood awarded a child rapist an Oscar even though he couldn't enter the country and gave him a standing ovation. Roman Polanski. 65. User avatar. Level 1. Alexis JM. 19HR. Ago. Edited 17HR. Ago. Alan Turing. Posthumous pardon isn't nearly enough. Brilliant mathematician, as a cryptographer helped the Allies win WWII, then was, allegedly, hounded into suicide after being convicted under anti-gay laws and subjected to chemical castration to stay out of jail. Note, I originally left out the part about the chemical castration, effectively a crude and involuntary gender transition, but added it after it was mentioned. 66. Alan Turing's best friend was fellow codebreaker Joan Clark. He did ask her to marry him because he felt the social obligation to do so. Watching an interview with her, you can see in her face she truly loved him and didn't care. I can see how bright she lights up talking about him. I can't find the other interview where she talked about how Alan was considered very handsome. Apparently very pretty girls would flirt with him and he was cold and dismissive to them, but he was always affectionate with his dear friend Joan. That has to be hard to be in love with somebody that can't love you the same way back. She eventually married, but remained close with Alan Turing. I believe she was the last person to talk to him before he took his own life. Alan Turing is the father of computer science. That's like inventing mathematics. 67. The modern world owes a massive debt to Alan Turing. His work breaking the Enigma machine helped to defeat Nazi Germany and laid the groundwork for everything computers would become. Our world today would look totally different without Alan Turing. 68. He was chemically castrated by the UK for being a gay man, which is pretty damn fucked up. 69. The woman who sued McDonald's because their coffee gave her third-degree burns. She tried to get her medical bills covered and their corporate lawyers destroyed her and turned her into a laughingstock and became a trope in our TV shows. She died thinking the entire world hated her, and to this day nobody responsible has ever apologized for the horrible things they did. 70. Yep, her labia was fused in parts due to the burns. 71. She also spent 8 days in the hospital and had to get multiple skin grafts to repair the damage done. Just horrible. And McDonald's turned her into some big joke. 72. She eventually died due to complications from all the surgeries at her old age too. She originally only sued to cover the medical expenses that Medicare didn't cover IRC. Not like she was trying to get a bunch of money out of them. 73. I worked on this case, and if the public were to see the images showing her injuries and medical reports, they'd be horrified. This was no frivolous case, and her injuries were horrible, to say the least. 74. I just Googled the images, and I really wish I hadn't. 75. She did actually win the lawsuit, and was paid some amount, but McDonald's annihilated her publicly anyways, in order to protect their reputation. 76. That case is my Roman Empire. The hill I will die on. McDonald's had an ad campaign about their coffee being so hot it would still be hot by the time you brought it home from the store. They faced multiple fines for their coffee being past the recommended temperature. They ran a smear campaign to make the lawsuit look like a scam when in reality she just wanted her medical bills paid after their coffee fused her goddamn cooter lips together. Edit, changed a word. 77. During the discovery process, internal emails were turned over showing that keeping the coffee that hot kept in the high 190s. Which is hot enough that keeping it at that temperature actually damages the coffee over any significant time frame, was actually a specific recommendation from corporate to their franchisees to make their unlimited free refills promo they had been running for a while for the coffee less impactful. Basically, the idea was while people would take the free refills if they finished the coffee before other purchased items, they likely wouldn't stick around just for the free coffee. So by serving it at a temperature that forced the customer to wait a while for it to cool before drinking any, they would reduce the number of customers who would claim the free refills. 78. That's really shitty corporate behavior by an insanely profitable company. 79. Stella Liebeck. 80. Yeah, she's still used as a joke sometimes, and whenever someone mentions her I always try to be like, actually. 81. I try not to be the, well, actually, guy, but the hot coffee case is a hill I'll die on. 82. 100%. It's so disgusting how she became a punchline and how what happened to her was framed as a cash grab. I know I believed it until I actually thought for myself and did research. Just horrible. 83. Probably every celebrity that had their nudes leaked in 2014. 84. Vanessa Hudgens for being shamed and forced to make a public apology when her private photographs were stolen and leaked on the internet. It wasn't enough that she had to apologize, but people thought she should have been fired from the High School Musical sequel. Disney didn't fire her, but they did release a statement saying they hoped she's learned a valuable lesson. 85. When Dane Cook called her out in the audience during an award show for her leaked nudes, I'm kind of happy his career nosedived. 86. Yeah, she didn't deserve that. I don't care what people say about taking those kinds of pics, no one deserves to have their private stuff put out there to the public like that. 87. Vanessa's treatment during that is exactly why I refuse to ever take nudes of myself. 88. She is dead, but Marilyn Monroe. She had it pretty rough but was glamorized. She also never posed for Playboy. Hugh Hefner bought the images and put them in it without her permission. After she died, he bought the plot next to her so he would be near her even after they both died. 89. Such a vile man. She couldn't even escape his creep ass even in death. Gross. 90. The last picture of her is frequently posted on our last images and every damn time. All people can comment on is how flat her ass looks and stuff of that nature. Even 60 plus years after her death, that woman can't just rest peacefully without objectification. She was so much more than just her body. 91. Rip Richard Jewell. Steve Bartman. 92. Steve Bartman was vilified for being a fan and doing exactly what any fan would do. That one still hurts on a human level. So glad the Cubs gave him a ring when they finally won a World Series. 93. I'm a Cubs fan and somehow missed that they gave him a ring. That's a really cool ending to an otherwise horrible story. 94. The Bartman thing still pisses me off. Everyone sitting around him was reaching for that ball, and he got scapegoated for that entire series loss. The worst part was the friends he went to the game with completely abandoned him while the angry mob was searching for him around the stadium. The guy loved baseball. 95. And it was Alex Gonzalez's fault that inning got away from them. He botched a double play ball that ended up leading to like 5 runs. He makes that play and we don't know who Steve Bartman is. 96. Corey Feldman. He was abused and sexually groomed by Hollywood producers as a child. It fucked him up royally. He tried multiple times to speak about it publicly and was crucified by big names who basically accused him of slander. Most notably, Barbara Walters very openly said he was damaging the industry with his reckless words. Corey was just telling the truth about the exploitation happening to child actors and no one believed him or helped him. They just hung him out to dry. When all the abuse came to a more public light years later, no one in Hollywood lifted a finger to help make amends to what they did to Corey. 97. Barbara Walters was truly horrible to some adult victims of child abuse, including Feldman and Britney Spears. She tried to be an ass to Dolly Parton and got verbally beat down though. 98. No one beats Dolly. That woman's a legend. 99. That's the thing about Dolly. She's clever enough to always have a comeback and will knock you down to size with a smile on her face. 100. I'm not offended by all the dumb blonde jokes because I know I'm not dumb. And I also know that I'm not blonde. Miss Dolly is a treasure. 101. Obligatory fuck Barbara Walters. 102. She dated Kissinger. I hope she welcomed him to hell. 103. Okay, and I'm aware hurt people, but Corey has this Raquel-esque harem of Corey's angels and it's super gross. He promises them the world as far as boosting their acting careers but controls everything including their diet, exercise, wardrobe, etc. Corey Feldman is disgusting. Fuck Corey Feldman, seriously. Haim was the better Corey? 104. Rebecca Black. She had zero musical experience, and she was 13 years old at the time. She had zero reason to think the song would go viral, and she ended up absorbing some of the most vile abuse the internet could muster. She did nothing to deserve it, beyond being a 13-year-old girl feeling her oats. Despite having every reason in the world to be upset, she showed maturity beyond her years and saw the funny side. Her song Saturday is a pretty solid spoof. Much respect. 105. I think it's so cool that Katy Perry invited her to be in the music video for Last Friday Night. 106. It also wasn't bad for what it was. I've heard worse by professional musicians. She was just having fun. 107. I remember feeling a little crazy at the time because I thought the song was genuinely kinda fun and catchy. Yeah, her voice gets nasally at points, but I've heard worse singers on the radio who don't get millions of emails telling them to kill themselves. Edit. Also, I want to say that for as dumb as Friday's lyrics are, the lyrics in the Black Eyed Peas, I Got a Feeling, are even dumber. There's a part in that song where they just sing out the days of the week like they're teaching it to a bunch of preschoolers. Where was the massive mockery of that in 2009? For shame. 108. Jake Lloyd, aka Anakin Skywalker from Star Wars Episode 1. 109. Him and Ahmed Best, and countless other Star Wars actors, have been vilified so much for doing their damn jobs. And Jake was a kid. Like, I hate people, I really do. If a Fellows fan asks me what I think of the last two sequels, I usually say my opinions on good, bad, and indifferent and end it with, but you know, if our fellow fans had learned after why they did to Jake and Ahmed, we actually might have something. And the light bulb goes off in their head that while yes, it didn't fully affect those films, the treatment of actors and their characters did eventually have something to do with those storylines. 110. The Leave Britney Alone? Dude was absolutely right, in retrospect. 111. Agree? I loved how Craig Ferguson would never tell jokes about her. He was definitely the only talk show host that left her alone. 112. Ahmed Best. 113. Lovely man. The backlash over Jar Jar almost drove him to suicide, even though the character's flaws had nothing to do with him. His parents were from Jamaica, so he came by that voice naturally. 114. Honestly, listening to Britney Spears' old interviews makes me sick. How do you ask a 15-year-old if she's a virgin on national TV? 115. Is it my imagination, or did everyone believe that Richard Gere shoved a gerbil up his ass at one point? 116. Topher Grace? People thought he was the problem on that 70s. When in reality it is a good idea not to be friendly with Danny Masterson. 117. Sinead O'Connor when she ripped up a pic of the Pope on SNL. She was marked crazy and lost her career. Cancelled before cancelled was a thing. Joe Pesci even said that he wanted to punch her in the face. Truth of the situation. She was an incredibly brave 20-something woman who used her platform to bring attention to the sexual abuse that was going on in the Catholic Church. She risked her entire career to do what is right. This was also 10 years before the Boston Globe exposed the Catholic Church. She was a hero who was minimized to a hysterical woman. 118. Brooke Shields, the over-sexualization she endured since a child, she deserves an apology from everyone. If you don't know this story, Google it. She posed for Playboy magazine at age 8 to 9, and did a movie at 12 in which she was a prostitute. In Blue Lagoon she was just 15 or 16 and the sex scenes had to be signed off by her parents because she was under 18. She was literally a child. IMO was low-key legal child pornography. The Playboy magazine pictures to this day still blow my mind how this was even legal and allowed. Super disturbing. The fact a bunch of adults approved this and published these pictures. WTF. Basically any female child actor before the Me Too movement deserves an apology. 119. Monica Lewinsky. 120. I remember watching this as a kid and thinking it would be understandable if people were upset with her over having an affair with a married man. I could also understand her wanting to take the opportunity. And I remember mostly feeling sad for Hillary and that Bill should own up and a divorce would be fair. Unfortunately, what happened next was that people shamed her for the type of sex they had, the cigar, the cum-stained dress, her weight, which I never understood. She looked great, her outfits, etc. Every exact detail was out there and she had to have that publicly put out there. And people didn't try to understand her. They just shamed and mocked her. She was used as a political tool to overthrow the government. And when that didn't work, people just moved on and forgot about it. 121. Came here to say this. I'm about the same age as she was when it all went down, and the thought of having one of my stupid decisions plastered all across the country, with minimal blame placed on the person who had that much more power than me, is insane. I have a lot of respect for her and how she's handled the attention. I remember her saying in an interview that someone told her to change her name in order to try and get jobs and such, and she remarked that not a single person ever suggested Bill Clinton do the same. 122. T-Pain. Dude was basically cancelled for using Auto-Tune before everyone started to do it. Then The Masked Singer happens and he comes out of the woodworks and proves that he can sing. Not only can he sing, but he's got a set of pipes on him, and he was ostracized and made fun of for the style of music he basically ushered in. 123. Too late now, but Paul Rubens, jerking off in a porno theater is like reading at a library. Anyone mentioning the child porn stuff really needs to look it up on Snopes. 124. Cliff Richard. The BBC used a dodgy police source to try and get the jump on allegations that he was involved in historical sexual abuse of children. It triggered a media circus at the time. The BBC likely wanted to get the scoop to repair their image after they covered for Jimmy Savile for decades. Thing is, he was completely innocent and the BBC ended up having to pay damages in court. However, Cliff Richard has remained mostly out of the public eye since. 125. Janet Jackson. 126. What a bad time when she was a teenager, groomed by a weirdo grown man who married her whole she as underage, and she was the one who was mocked. 127. Jessica Simpson, for how bad the tabloids scrutinized her in the 2000s. 128. That poor woman just couldn't catch a damn break. Between the John Mayer interview, the incessant booing at sporting games because she was apparently cursed, and all the yo-yo dieting, it's a wonder she made it through at all. 129. Pam Anderson, Britney Spears, Monica Lewinsky. 130. Think we can just make this. Female celebrities in the 90s. 131. One of the few times South Park actually apologized to a celebrity was when they realized Al Gore was right about global warming.